Okay, so tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the disability community.
Sure. So my name is Katy Schmid. I'm the Senior Director of National Programs at the ARC of the United States. I got involved with the disability community because I actually had an aunt that was born with an intellectual disability, and she died in an institution before I was born. So it sort of was just a part of how I grew up, knowing that I had an aunt with a disability. And then my brother actually had a learning disability and ADHD. And so that like laid the foundation of my interest in supporting and working with the disability community. In high school, I volunteered for Special Olympics, and I really, really was drawn to working with peers with disabilities. And that sort of laid the foundation into me going into special education. So I started off my career as a special educator. Would you like for me to sort of like go through my path up to present day, or
Sure.
sure, okay. So after going into the classroom, I was working with various technologies with students with autism, and I really saw an impact on how technology could be used to support students, but also could be incorporated just into everyday instruction. So from there, I became an assistive technology specialist, where I was working with students in transition settings. So students that were college bound, but also students who are working on job sites and working on career skills. And I had a brief stint at an ed tech company. And then that brought me to the ARC of the US, where I've been now for 8 years.
That's cool. So I understand that you're involved in like program initiatives at the ARC of the United States. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So when I first came on board here at the ARC, I was working under the umbrella of tech programs. Initially, that work was focused on developing out applications and websites that would support our chapter network. So just to take one step back, the ARC of the United States has 600 federated chapters throughout the country. So I work at the national office, and I work to support those chapters, but then also work with like-minded partners throughout the country. So with the tech programs, when I came on board, we were developing out different types of technologies, but we were also working with funding from various partners where we would establish direct support programs at our chapters. So one example of that is tech coaching centers, where we provide subgrants to chapters across the country to work within their communities to support people with disabilities to learn technology. We also support them to focus on assisting their family members to learn that technology. I work on another program currently called the ARC at School, which is focused on special education advocacy, where we have an online special education advocacy curriculum that is meant to assist disability professionals and family members and educators to better understand how to navigate the law around special education. So those are currently my two main buckets. But I have worked on other teams here at the ARC National, including Center for Future Planning, which is focused on assisting professionals on systems navigation, the ARC at Work, which is focused on partnerships around employment, inclusive employment, as well as occasionally being brought into conversations with our policy team to weigh in where there might be the need for subject matter expertise.
Mm-hmm. My next question is, what sort of stakeholders do you work with, in the disability community specifically?
Yeah, so there's a handful that I work with. I think first and foremost is working directly with people with disabilities. That's most important, is ensuring that all voices are brought to the table, as well as their families. We also work with the professionals across all of our chapter network and like-minded organizations. So I've worked with an organization such as Easter Seals, Color of Autism. So we do try to partner with organizations that have similar goals to us. I partner with government agencies, so I'm being brought into conversations with the FCC, for example, and then also funders. So I work with various funders. Oftentimes they are Fortune 50 companies who are looking to put their money to good work. And so I work with them to come up with programmatic ideas that will then funnel down to the local communities and result in direct impact within communities.
Hmm. My next question is, what impact does your work have on folks with individuals with disabilities? You know, like your work in program initiatives specifically, because that's your current title or role.
Yeah. So the first example I'll use, I've talked about a little bit already, is the tech coaching centers. So taking the funding that we receive from a partner and then providing that funding out to our chapter network to then establish programs at the state or local level. That money gets put to use by working directly to provide coaching to people with disabilities and their family members so that they can better learn how to use the technology. So essentially it's covering the cost of a location, the cost of a staff member at the chapter, technology itself, and the time to work with somebody to learn that technology. So that's just one example as it relates to tech coaching. And then another example is around the ARC at School. Over the past 3 years or so, we've shifted some of our work at the ARC at School to really ensure that we're covering all bases and making sure that we reach multiply marginalized households. So we provided 500 free accounts to BIPOC and low-income households to ensure that they were receiving free access to the special education advocacy curriculum in order to better understand how to navigate special education, which is oftentimes incredibly complicated. So those are two examples of how our programs actually reach folks with disabilities and their families. I'm happy to provide more if needed.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so we also will work with families on storytelling to ensure that we are bringing all of the stories and voices within our community to light. So oftentimes we might receive an inquiry from a media outlet, and we will then work with families and people with disabilities to really better understand their experiences and to help mitigate any challenges, barriers, issues that they may be facing moving forward.
Hmm. Lastly, how can programming initiatives, help individuals with disabilities be more represented in the community, if you will?
Yeah, so we have what we call the Access, Equity, and Inclusion team at the ARC of the US. And what we do with that team is try to embed that into every single program that we are starting or renewing and continuing to ensure that we are having board members from the disability community to lend a voice as we're developing out these programs. We also have a council of self-advocates within the ARC of the United States that meet regularly, and different program teams and different teams at the ARC of the US are oftentimes working with them directly to assist with plain language development, providing feedback on programs or resources that we're working on. So those are just a couple of examples that immediately come to mind.
That's cool. Cool stuff.